if you would like, it's in the Sutra book that we chant.
Yes, let's do
The Gatha on opening the Sutra. On page 2.
Gatha on opening the Sutra.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all here on the third day of session, right? Wow. It's so wonderful to be practicing all together. We're all suffering together, basically, which is helpful. So I'm talking today about the Mountains and Rivers Sutra, which I have been, I've talked about before, but you know, there's so much to this sutra, even in the first part, which I already talked about, but there's more to say. And I was just in Salisbury, Indiana, just before session, since Thursday, last week Thursday, until Sunday. And Salisbury is about 4 hours south and about an hour and a half west of Indianapolis. And I was at my hula students' home, Lori and John Murphy. And we were there to do a pahu, or a Hawaiian drum making, kind of like workshop retreat for those 4 days. And about a year ago, John and Lori, which I didn't know until I went, have 138 acres of forest. That's their property. And the houses are far apart, and it's very peaceful there. They have some deer. That's all they've seen on their property. I mean, you know, in terms of large mammals other than man. And about a year ago, they found a downed tree, an aspen log. It could be a yellow poplar also. And so they thought, well, this looks like a good tree to make some Hawaiian drums with. Why don't we cut it up, put it in, and put it in their crawl space, which is temperature controlled. So the logs cut up have been in their space under the house for a year, slowly drying. So when we went on Thursday to work on the drums, they were kind of like the perfect, you know, not real damp, because if you start carving a drum out of damp wood, there is a very good likelihood it's going to crack because of the dryness during the winter here. So it was like perfect. So on Thursday, we all spent the whole day sanding, you know, doing really great work, meditative work, planing, because John had taken off the outer bark, but there was still kind of hairy filaments on the log. And my log, if you want to look at it afterwards, is behind the orange chair by the window in the community room. I think Ken carried it from the car to there, and it's rather heavy. It's rather heavy. So I was kind of carrying this from the shed out, and so it was great. It was such meditative work, you know, planing the hair off, and then sanding it, and then starting to chip into it with some tools. Spent the whole day doing that. Not a lot of talking. I told everyone, you know, I really want this to be kind of like a meditation, and that you're just focused on what you're doing, just, you know, chipping or planing. So I noticed the next day that I felt in bed as I was waking up, I felt really good. You know, it's like nature is being in contact with nature, which we have a little bit of here, is really quite healing and meditative. So I felt good, like I didn't even want to look at my social media, which I noticed, that was interesting to me. So I thought, you know, we're going to delve into this Mountains and Waters Sutra, and what I would like to do sometime is to actually go on a retreat in nature that maybe has some mountains and rivers, and really kind of sink into this sutra. Okay, so that's, so let me read the first part of the Mountains and Rivers Sutra. This is by Dogen. In Japanese, it's Sansuikyo. Sansuikyo. Mountains and waters right now actualize the ancient Buddha expression, each abiding in its condition unfolds its full potential. Let me read that again. Each abiding in its condition unfolds its full potential. Because mountains and waters have been active since before the empty eon, they are alive at this moment. Because they have been the self since before before form arose, they are emancipation actualized. Read that again. Because they have been the self since before form arose, they are emancipation actualized. Because mountains are high and broad, their way of riding the clouds always extends from the mountains. Their wondrous power of soaring in the wind comes freely from the mountains. Priest Dao Kai of Mount Furong said to the assembly, "The green mountains are always walking. A stone woman gives birth at night." Again, the green mountains are always walking. A stone woman gives birth at night. Mountains do not lack the characteristics of mountains. Therefore, they always abide in ease and always walk. Examine in detail the characteristics of the mountains walking. Examine in detail the characteristics of mountains walking. Mountains walking is just like human walking. Accordingly, do not doubt mountains walking, even though it does not look the same as human walking. The Buddha ancestors' words point to walking. This is fundamental understanding. Penetrate these words. Dogen. So much in there, right? So much. So Norman Fisher did a bunch of Teishos on this sutra that was compiled into a book, and I'm using a lot of his commentary about those words, just those words, and then it's just... So first he says, this is called the Mountains and Rivers Sutra, and sutras actually refer to the Buddha's words that were remembered and written down. But he's not suggesting that this essay is a sutra and therefore the words of the Buddha. He's saying, he's making the statement that the activities and sounds of mountains and rivers are in themselves a sutra because they perfectly express the teachings of the historical Buddha. They perfectly express the teachings of the historical Buddha. So we better listen to them. Yes, and so, right, they're teaching us. Mountains and rivers are teaching us. So mountains and rivers are expressing Buddha nature, just as they are, just like we are expressing Buddha nature, just as we are. Really? As I was preparing for this talk, I was very deeply engrossed in, this. And all of a sudden I hear this very loud knock on my door. And I'm like startled, and it's Daegu. I mean, this is a loud knock. This is like a yell, okay? Like that, and I said, you startled me, don't knock so loud. And Daegu says, were you enlightened? And I said, yeah, that I want to kill you. And then Daegu opens the door. I think it's only Daegu, but there is An and Jeremy standing right next to him. And I'm thinking, oh no, broken the precepts right in front. An and Jeremy, oh no, yeah. Pride comes, I was showing it, the ego was popping up again. So priest Dao Kai, right, who said to the assembly, the green mountains are always walking, a stone woman gives birth at night. So I had to look up who priest Dao Kai was. And he was a priest in the Song dynasty of China. About, let's see, it was like something like 1043 to 1116 he lived. And he was quite a remarkable Zen priest. He and another priest revived the Cao Dang school in China, which is like the Soto school. And Dogen was specifically impressed and inspired by him. So Dogen brought Soto back to Japan when it was, anyway, he brought it back. And the interesting thing about Dao Kai is he was offered by the emperor because he was so greatly awakened, spiritual, very spiritual. The emperor offered him the purple robe, okesa, a purple okesa. And Dao Kai is famous for turning it down. I mean, the purple robe of the ancestor. So that was interesting to me. And let's see, anyway, what's interesting about that was he turned it down, I mean, for probably a lot of reasons, but one big one was that it can affect your humility if you get something like that from the emperor. And Dao Kai said, that's not for me. I'm a simple priest. And I thought that was quite inspiring, actually. So he has this famous saying about the green mountains are always walking, and a stone woman gives birth at night. So, I mean, you think about mountains, and do you think of them walking? In our ordinary human lives, they're quite mobile. And in fact, when we meditate, I remember when Roshi first gave me instruction on meditation, he said, you can always do shikantaza, which means sit like a mountain. Yeah, so it's like, okay, well, at that time, we were in Waimea, where we began the Zen Center of Hawaii, but before then, he gave me some basic instruction. And we were at the base of one of the most unique and large mountains of the world, Mauna Kea. Its cultural name is Mauna Kea. Mauna Kea means white mountain, which because there's snow in the wintertime, it's 13,800 feet above sea level. But below sea level, on the ocean floor, it's 33,500 feet. So it's larger than Mount Everest even. And so our house looked upon the backyard, looked on this beautiful mountain. And so I had that to compare or, about sitting like a mountain. Okay, that's how I'm supposed to sit like a mountain. And when we sit zazen, actually, what are we doing? We're sitting like a mountain. We're still. But at the same time, there's all kinds of processes in our body that is moving, right? And if you think of mountains in terms of geologic time, they are actually moving too, but very, very slowly. Mauna Kea is over 1 million years old. So this is definitely challenging our perception of what is movement and what is stillness. Permanence, impermanence, constantly changing, moving. And then a stone woman gives birth at night. So Hawaiians, to them, we actually have female and male rocks. The female rocks have holes in them, and the male rocks don't. And they know that rocks procreate, make more rocks. And so this is not something new to us, but for Western mind, stone woman giving birth at night, that's kind of different, right? So just think about the element of night, darkness, something you can't see, hidden. And what can emerge from that darkness? Emptiness, or, well, emptiness can be full. Emptiness is fullness, but darkness. Everything in Hawaiian mythology came from darkness, from po, from night, emerged, was created. So I wanted to get back to the mountain also, right? Mountains as our teachers. So for the Hawaiians, Mauna Kea is actually like an embodiment of Haumana, Haumea, or Papa, who is the Earth Mother. and Wakea is the sky father. And they both mated and created the islands. And they also created Ho'oho Kukalani, which is the evening, the starlit sky. And then Wakea actually mated with Ho'oho Kukalani, and their offspring was, the first offspring was a stillbirth. And the stillbirth was put in the earth, and the taro plant grew from that stillbirth, which is a staple food of the Hawaiian people. And the next child was man. So humans have elder brother taro, and cousins, or in their genealogy, mountains and islands. So you can see the Hawaiian philosophical viewpoint that they're all related in terms of genealogy. And then there's a beautiful passage that I just love, where Norman Fisher talks about Chan, or Zen. I'm looking at Yuki because maybe he can tell me, but I think an original, when the Chinese heard about meditation, they were looking at, I think, a Sanskrit word for meditation. And here, yeah. And so their word, dhyana, I think it was dhyana, was meditation. Chan was not so much meaning meditation, but it was sounding like that Sanskrit word, dhyana. And so what Chan actually means is to bow before mountains and rivers. To bow before mountains and rivers. And I think Zen, also the word Zen, to bow before mountains and rivers. So when I heard that, I felt so good that we were practicing Chan, because I felt we're finally, I mean, I know Zen has a very close relationship with nature. Yes, the Japanese aesthetics is all about nature and beauty. But when I saw it, because the Hawaiian aesthetic is very much that as well, very much in line with nature, I felt like I was kind of coming home to the importance of nature in our life, that we were giving nature the attention and the respect it deserves. These are Buddhas, just like us. So attention, I think Roshi spoke, and I know there's a famous koan about attention. But Simone Weil said that attention is the rarest form of generosity. So when we are doing Zazen, and especially initially when we are trying to come into our bodies and we focus on the breath with shamatha, right? We are paying close attention to ourselves or the breath into our bodies. So that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And Simone Weil, she felt that truly paying attention to another person or to the world around us was indeed a form of generosity. And perhaps the most precious kind. And it requires us to step outside of our own preoccupations and internal chatter, which is exactly what we're doing on Zazen. We're trying to step away, step out of it. And she wrote extensively about attention being a form of prayer and moral practice. She was a French philosopher, mystic, and political activist who lived between 1909 and 1943. And also, she felt that truly seeing and attending to others, especially those who suffer, was fundamental to both the spiritual and ethical life. And we can't forget about us as well. And Norman says in his commentary that the Chinese never looked upon meditation as something that is good for our physical and mental health. Though we do say that in our meditation for every one class, because it does, it helps. But, they never taught that, but that it was simply an expression of spiritual truth. Buddha nature. That's why we sit, because we have Buddha nature, because we are Buddhas, not to become a Buddha. So Dogen was very different in the 13th century as a result, because that's what he taught, and others were not teaching that. And then he, enlightenment, we've been talking about enlightenment. And Dogen says, for Dogen, enlightenment is present in every single moment. Even that knock on the door that scared me so much.
Especially.
And Norman says, it is simply wholehearted participation in every moment without anything left out. So my saying, I want to cue, that was extra, not necessary. Why am I saying that to Ken? I like to tease him too, but then there was Jeremy and no. But do you see what I mean? That was extra, not necessary. Yes, to Dogen, Zen practice is enlightenment, and it's happening here and now. Here and now. It isn't something that happens later as a result of our suffering on the cushion. it's, as Maizumi Roshi says, it's appreciating life as it is. Appreciate your life moment by moment, even though it might not be what you consider to be enlightening or great. Even that. Letting go of judgment or the ego, how the ego looks, and letting that go. So you can be totally present, otherwise it's just cluttering up stuff. So Norman says, right now, step inside your life and let go of all conceptual frameworks that alienate you from yourself and from each other. Just enter life completely in this very moment. Feel the awesome presence of what you can hear, see, smell, taste, and touch right now. Become aware of emotions, thoughts, memories, and dreams that flood awareness without getting hooked by any of them. Feel how, right now, human experience is truly awesome, and don't look for something to complete what is already complete. So Roshi gave a wonderful talk yesterday, and he talked about projections. That's extra. Okay, that's really extra here. But we kind of, can tend to do that a lot. And that's because the ego is just doing its thing with you. So can we let that go? Can we let that ego go? Not so easy. But the whole practice of sesshin is one of patience, right? When you're sitting on the cushion, you are practicing patience. This is a perfection of a bodhisattva, patience. When you're doing oryoki, you're practicing patience. It's all about the process and not about how you look or the end product. It's how you open to each part of the process or not, and notice that. And let go, let go. So I was reminded of Marshall Rosenberg's teachings in nonviolent communication, which we learned a long time ago, and Roshi gave some classes last year. So these are some principles. Observation without evaluation. Observation without evaluation, right? Just describing what you actually see or hear without adding your interpretation. It's extra. Expressing your own feelings and needs rather than assuming you know what theirs are, especially. What are you feeling and needing? Try not to have too much extra on there, all the story and commentary. And then making requests instead of demands. I think that you can better do that when the ego is at bay, that you kind of let go of the ego, you can make requests versus demands. And then asking genuine questions to understand the other person's perspective. Understand. So I wanted to end with a poem by Joy Harjo, our poet laureate for 3 years. And this is called Eagle Poem. To pray, you open your whole self to sky, to earth, to sun, to moon, to one whole voice that is you. And know there is more that you can't see, can't hear, can't know except in moments steadily growing, and in languages that aren't always sound, but other circles of motion. Like eagle that Sunday morning over Salt River, circled in blue sky, in wind, swept our hearts clean with sacred wings. We see you, see ourselves, and know that we must take the utmost care and kindness in all things. Breathe in, knowing we are made of all this, and breathe, knowing we are truly blessed because we were born and die soon within a true circle of motion, like eagle rounding out the morning inside us. We pray that it will be done in beauty, in beauty. So we have time for discussion and questions. I think we might need to pass the microphone around. There's a microphone over there.
Thank you so much for a beautiful talk, Roshi Jun. It was really wonderful to hear. When you were talking about the mountains walking, it made me think about something I learned recently about our local area. So under Lake Michigan, there is a shipwreck that you can visit on the near south side. And what it's wrecked on is a former mountain. That's a granite outcropping under the lake. And so right, if you dive on the shipwreck, you can also see this sort of ancient remnant of what used to be giant rocks or hills or mountains and whatnot. So I thought that was just a local connection that I was thinking about.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Erica.
Sure. Thank you, Roshi. I was thinking that the mountains and rivers back in the day for our ancestors, they were surrounded by that. That was their home and just their environment. And for us, we live in an urban environment. And I wonder if like skyscrapers or the train, that's the equivalent of our mountains and rivers. And if we can see the Dharma within that.
That's a good question, An. What do you think?
I think they are if we're open to them.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, Yuki.
Thank you very much for the talk. My father was a priest, but also he was a self-established geologist, and there's a local university professors who inspired him to study geology. And there's this thing in Japan that goes horizontally and then go up like a little section, median tectonic line. That's what he used to just call.
What is it called? Median?
Median tectonic line. It's a
Tectonic incline.
Yes, it's all the fault lines that go around. And because it was my dad doing it, I wasn't that interested. But I think I would have if it was probably the next door neighbor or someone. But anyway, he studied all this, and then I remember Sotozen school asking him to talk about this sort of as a way to sort of approach the teachings, which I don't think he was expecting. Then because of this, I think he also studied I think I just came across this little fact that all the temples and shrines are built along these fault lines. Many of them. You know, also when the tsunami hit in Japan, I think there's this kind of ancient knowledge. All the temples and shrines were just at the level the water didn't reach. Wow. Many of the young, new buildings and shrines were affected. So there's this kind of interesting fact that
the younger temples and
yes,
shrines
new
were
ones,
affected
and
by the tsunami.
needless to say, the new residential areas or buildings are, of course, kind of ignoring this thing. So it kind of revealed the sort of length of time that people have retained and how they selected these locations. And just that was one of the things I remember him sharing. That I could understand. Other stuff I couldn't understand.
Thank you so much. I am so full. I could say a lot. But I'll say two things, because one is trains, because some people know spends a lot of time on long distance trains, and I've been reflecting but haven't written yet on Buddha on the train. And you get on the train and you just go. You go with the train, and there's something about that. You're just there on the train. So I think there is something to that. Yeah. The other thing is that idea of that's something extra. That's just that. It just hit me. It's just exquisite for me that I haven't thought about that word, but how much in interactions or with other people or with the world, I add extra that is either totally unnecessary or perhaps damaging. So I love that. I'm going to take that and hold it. So I love that. Some extra.
Well, I learned that from Roshi.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, Roshi. When you were talking about the mountains walking, the visual that came to my heart was about avalanches and landslides, and just the idea that of this mountain just in and itself walking and shaking some of those things off as it moves. That was kind of the visual, which was really nice. And then when you were talking about the humility of not accepting the purple robes, the priest not accepting that, I was thinking about Bernie Glassman, because I was reading recently that Maizumi Roshi wanted him to take the title of Roshi, and he didn't want to. And he asked to decline that because he didn't feel that he wanted that title as he was engaging with people in the streets and the work that he was doing. But Maizumi would have nothing to do with it, and said he would not allow him to not take that. But and just about how, in his own journey, he said there was a time and a place for him to use that, but it wasn't something that he felt he needed. So it was just interesting to. see that humility is something very important in the lineage.
Yes, mountains walking. Lovely. Remember when we went to the Lakota retreat, we were, I'd never been in Nebraska before, and we drove across, it was Nebraska, wasn't it? I think it was. Yeah, it was Nebraska, and it turned out that much of the Nebraska was sand dunes. And I was surprised that there were sand dunes in Nebraska. And then I went and started reading about the geological thing, and there were shells in Nebraska too. So it turns out, in terms of geological time, the Gulf of Mexico went up all the way, a long time ago, all the way up through the Midwest, and that was all underwater. And the Rocky Mountains slowly walked and eroded and basically disappeared, and all the erosion from the previous mountain range of the Rocky Mountains ended up in the sand dunes in the Midwest and filled up all that water. And the Rocky Mountains that we see today is another mountain range after the previous one. So that's mountains walking. The other thing is not such a pleasant image that comes to my mind is that now there are a lot of towns in Vermont or North Carolina where the mountains are walking and flooding, where people least expect that to be happening. It's another kind of walking.
The concept of just enough, not that little extra is very powerful for me. From a standpoint of oryoki, I learned yesterday that oryoki means just enough. And you literally learn how much salad dressing do you need and how much do you want to clean up and do you want to drink all of that? But extra is not better. And from a human performance standpoint, I've told this story a lot, but one day the San Jose track team had a practice and the coach said, I don't want you running at 100%. I want you running at 90%. And that day, more school records were set because, as it turned out, going to where the athletes thought was 100% was too much. And the extra energy declined performance by that amount. So it's understanding what is enough is fascinating to me.
As usual, what a lovely talk, Roshi. Just amazing. And I'm really sitting with the stone woman gives birth at night. And the first time that I heard that, thinking the impossible. And then relaxing into the ways that we limit, that our conceptual mind wants to limit our experience and does limit our experience. So the stone woman giving birth at night, as you said, there's this sort of magical, mystical feeling to what's arising in the shadows, what's arising in the dark, that it's quite pregnant, if you will, with possibility, with beauty, and it's just an exhilarating thought to me. So thank you, Roshi.
One other thought on what we've just talking about, and that is when you have just enough, and you understand that that's just enough. There's this feeling of that I'm finding, of completeness, of, oh, I thought I needed more and I didn't. And it's that self-correcting that is very powerful, and it kind of ties into what Roshi Robert was talking about yesterday. And it just, the two talks, I don't know if you guys strategized on it, but they built on each other beautifully.
Yes, we planned it, Ken. I just wanted to add one thing about Yogetsu, your comments, right? So, right, the dark is like what we don't know, right? And if we can relax into that not knowing, which is our practice, right? What possibilities might emerge? We don't know, but it's pregnant with possibilities. Yes, so can we just relax into that?
I also want to comment on that a stone woman giving birth at night. As a former birth doula, I attended at least 100 natural births. And there is something we call transition, which is that time between the laboring, which is getting to 10 centimeters, the opening of the cervix getting to 10 centimeters before pushing begins. And it's called transition, and it is the most difficult time during labor. It's the most intense, it's the most painful. And I used to educate women on allowing during that time, just letting it be, just allow. And in that allowing, the birth happens. And I saw the women that fought it, and I too learned when I was giving birth to our first child that I was fighting it, or I was trying to do it a certain way. How I'd learned, you push, like you bear down, you hold your breath. And I said to my midwife, this doesn't feel natural. And she said to me, don't try, just be. And our daughter was born. So there is a power to that, to what can emerge from that darkness. And Roshi, I also want to thank you so much for this talk. Nature is key to me, and I find the power of it is amazing. In fact, I think I first learned to meditate in nature because to me it's easier to appreciate. I'm just looking at that little tree there. To appreciate the beauty, the wonder, to be curious in nature, to stop asking why, to not be in that questioning, but just to be. So thank you for that reminder.
Thank you so much. That was such an inspiring talk, and there's many things that came up. But first one about mountains walking. I think if it was maybe about like 5 years ago, and someone would tell me that like mountains are walking, I would think they're crazy. But now it just feels real. And I thought of one of the talks that I think Caroline gave, or one of, maybe that was during the parenting group. She was speaking about the trees and how they change between the seasons. And I thought mountains, that's maybe how they're walking too, because they walk through different seasons, different clouds and different things, and that's their walking. It's different than the human walking, but it's still walking. And then the other thing,
We're soaring.
yeah, and that came up about darkness. Like, there's all these sayings, and English is my learned language, so it's all these sayings about like, go extra mile to get your light, keep your wick lighten up, and it's all about the light. But yet, there's such a beauty in actually going the other way, and it's not being scared of the darkness and embracing it. But that not knowing of like what the darkness brings, it's so scary. But yet, maybe it's not about light, it's about actually embracing the darkness first.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your lovely talk. And thanks everyone else for your comments. They were really just brilliant. I'm a newcomer. I'm just kind of doing the shorter retreat because I honestly was really nervous about taking 3 days of sitting, and it hasn't been easy for me. But one of the things you mentioned, a couple of things. With the woman who gives the mountain at night, who gives birth to the mountain at night, there's a mystery there that is just, it just brings up like, oh, that can't be, that's not possible, but maybe it is. Maybe there's something there. And the other thing that really struck me was talking about your attention, and I find attention to be one of the most difficult things for me is to pay attention and to pay attention to others. And what I'm hearing and learning a little bit about is how attention is a gift. And what I would almost aspire to is that attention would be something natural that I could do, that I could give to others. And thank you.
Yes, good. Thank you, Mike, and to you. And to you.
Roshi, one thing is really interesting, and in the context of the Zendo having two Roshis who are both artists, because how we view reality versus how we view art is something that I'm coming to grips with. Nobody ever got upset or said that can't happen when they watched Harry Potter and they saw a track 9 3/4 or a wand or whatever, because we are engaged in what they call the willing suspension of disbelief. We open ourselves up to art in a way that we no longer open ourselves up to nature. And I think the difference, and I don't mean to throw Thoreau in here, but without Adrian here, because he always loves that. But the idea is it's not what we are looking at, according to Thoreau, it's what we see. And if we allow ourselves to see the wonder, to treat nature like we treat our art, where nothing surprises us in art, and yet we reject that same possibility in our life. And the paradox is art is actually just a recreation of life itself. It's a representation of reality.
Well, I think you forgot yourself, with how we see nature, how we see ourselves as well, with
Thank
that
you.
same kind of respect and compassion. That's the practice.
I meant to say that, yes.
I was thinking when we lived in Hawaii on Mauna Kea, because we lived on the foothills, we saw it day in and day out. So we saw the many faces of the mountain in the dawn and dusk and midday and the clouds. And I painted that mountain many times, and it was always different, But the other thing about Dogen is you just can't pin him down, the mountain's walking. Who's walking? Who's the mountain? And then I thought, Mauna Kea, your father walked all over that mountain hunting. everywhere. He probably knew every place of that mountain, and it was hard to walk on. It was lava rocks. I mean, big. Yeah. So it was hard to walk on. And yet, people walk all over that mountain all the time, hunting,
Hunters mostly.
mostly hunters, I
Mostly,
think.
or, you
for
know,
sheep.
or people wanting to just.
Yeah. So I love Dogen because he's just, you know, the stone woman dancing it. It's like, yeah, the possibilities and how we limit things through our conceptual mind. Yeah. Lovely talk, honey. Yeah, we collaborate closely. She doesn't listen to me.
Yeah, so I know my father, thanks for mentioning my father, because he loved that mountain. And the Hawaiians say, like I was born in, and my father too, in the district of Hamakua. It's one of 9 districts on the Big Island. And Mauna Kea is situated in Hamakua district. And so that's your mountain. If you were born and the mountain is in that district, it's like your mountain that you are responsible for, actually. And my father was the first one to kind of open my eyes about the telescopes on the mountain, because there's already, even without the one that's been a lot of controversy about, there were about 10 telescopes on the mountain. You can see that when you're, you know, from where we were in Waimea. And one day as we were driving, I was driving back to our house with him, he just says kind of softly, don't you think that kind of spoils the mountain? And I had never noticed that before, because they started being built, I think, when I was a young teen or something. And so I never really, and then I went, yeah, it kind of does, actually. And then there's been this whole huge effort to stop the 31-meter telescope from being built on the mountain. Native Hawaiians, and with social media, a lot of people came in support. They called them kia'i, protectors of the mountain. So anyway, any questions online?
Yes, some of the things that were in Sutra kind of struck me, especially the stone woman giving birth and the mountains. You know, Dogen says the mountains are moving even though we don't see them that way. I think for me, he's pointing to that things aren't permanent, that stone can give birth. There's something, I don't know, I don't exactly know, but he's pointing toward that we see things as permanent, but they really aren't. They're not permanent. They're always changing. What we see is
That's right. That's one of the teachings in Buddhist philosophy. Things are not permanent.
I know. I could say oh yes, I know that. I've heard that. So I guess he's talking about what is real and what we, you know, and we don't see what is really real. And I think we put a lot of faith in what we see. We put a lot of, and it's maybe a lot of misconception. We put a lot of faith in what we see and believe, and maybe that's not really the case. That's not really truth with a capital T.
Thank you, Earl. All right, and I think on that note.
Roshi.
Oh, one more.
One thing, yeah, I really love the talk. Something that came to mind was something I grew up with, as saying, a little more than enough is much too much. I think that's really nice. And the other thing is, there's also a story of Dogen being offered the purple robe, and he's turned it down because he said the monkeys in the mountain would be laughing at him.
Thank you. Thank you.
Prepare for lunch.
Does this stay on this table or goes over there?